All right. Welcome to Behaviorally Speaking. It's our monthly series where we connect with industry experts and clients around the world to explore the latest insights into consumer behavior and market trends. Each episode brings you closer to understanding how brands can make smarter decisions globally, from innovative pack design to cutting edge tech adoption. I'm Paul Markovic, Vice President of Behavioral Qualitative here at Behaviorally. I'm delighted to welcome this month's guest, Candace Walters, Senior Manager of Design and Graphics Americas at Molson Coors. How you doing, Candace?
Hey, Paul. So great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Today, our subject is dispelling the misconceptions of qualitative research. We're going to dive right into it. Got a couple of talking points. First one being, how do you create an environment where consumers feel comfortable sharing honest feedback? And what are those techniques that are used to encourage that dialogue with consumers?
One important thing is the moderator creating an environment of familiarity and encouraging an open exchange between the participants. Let them know it's okay and even beneficial when there's respectful disagreement between them. Because if they care enough to make a point that's not following the rest of the crowd, they're passionate about it, and we want to hear that. Also,
Absolutely.
briefly establishing who the respondents are as individuals. I know that you know a lot about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, it's establishing that rapport with the group, right? So what I call is the emotional handshake. We go around the room and I get to connect on in an individual basis with each respondent, right? Gets them a bit more comfortable. I let them know who I am. And what's also important is letting them know that I am maybe a third party. I am not working directly for any of the brands, the products, any of the stuff that we're going to talk about, because I think that does keep them, a bit more comfortable in sharing their true opinions, whether it be positive, negative, neutral. It certainly does keep them a bit more open to sharing those types of thoughts as well.
And when you get to know more about them and they're talking about themselves and their lifestyle, and then they start to talk about what it is that you're testing, you get a better idea of, do they really feel like this is a brand and a product for them? And then, of course, managing any showboats that may be in the group so they don't monopolize the conversation and discourage other people from contributing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's definitely, the role of the moderator is you want to be one of them, but also have a bit of authority, not too much to, intimidate them, but ensuring that we're getting equal feedback and we don't have a showboat that might be, taking over the conversation. So when actually conducting the research itself, right, it's important to avoid subjectivity. We know this, analysis paralysis, confirmation bias, and things like that. How do we ensure that we avoid that, whether it be in discussion guides or even in the research itself?
So crafting objective questions based in the project brief is critical, not likes and dislikes. You ask those questions to understand if the stimulus is communicating effectively. That's far more useful to the creative agency to understand what modifications may need to be made versus trying to decipher why somebody does or doesn't like a certain color or a shape. Also, avoiding stimulus that's iterative. So that avoids that analysis paralysis. We don't want people to try to figure out, okay, these look really close. What's different between them? Because it takes away that visceral response that really gives us an insight into how they're feeling. Testable differences are more effective in revealing the path forward. And then confirmation bias, well, we are all a victim of that. Be honest with yourself about your ingoing biases when you're crafting that questionnaire. We often may have personal favorites going into research, but if we reject that feedback that contradicts our preferences, we risk wasting valuable input and turning research into an N of one exercise.
Absolutely. That resonates with me. The conversation about the likes and dislikes, while as a moderator, it's nice to hear, it doesn't answer my questions, right? I want to understand what design and packaging is communicating, right? Because a group of people could like or dislike a pack design, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is or is not communicating what you are trying to communicate through your core objectives here. And so we use techniques, projective techniques to try to get at that, have consumers think outside the box a little bit and think a bit differently and going up again beyond the like and dislike. We use Gladys, which is an online platform where consumers are responding on tablets, on iPads, before actually sharing as a group, right? So one technique I like to use is our hashtag exercise. So it gets at that visceral response using emojis. You know, how does this packaging make you feel? And then we get to the captions and the hashtags to really understand, well, what is it communicating as well? So I think these are all great techniques, and it's a great point about, you know, separating the subjective from objective here. And with that, thinking about stimulus, right? The actual stim, you know, brands like yours certainly have clear objectives and you know, have specific, you know, business questions and things that you're looking to achieve. How do you ensure that, you know, you're providing stimulus or building stimulus that's going to really address those issues?
It's all rooted in being faithful to the creative brief, and sometimes requires some creativity to ensure alignment, because it's not always a traditional way of showing the stimulus. So consider that context. That's the main thing. What's the context of the environment and the realities of how your final creative will be experienced by the consumer? Stimuli should be presented to consumers in that environment, or at least a simulation of it, not in isolation on a plain white sheet. It's just not realistic for the things that are going to be a part of the consumer experience. So if you have a brief for a packaging program that's supposed to be designed in such a way that when you put multiple packages together, it creates a larger presence at shelf or in the retail environment, but then you show it to consumers in isolation on a clean white sheet, it's not going to give you the data that you really need to know if it's being effective.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, right? So context and environment is everything. And it's why we do our hybrid approach where we will have consumers shop, you know, your design on shelf, because, you know, what they see in isolation is one thing, but then that is something that could maybe be lost when it is in the shelf context itself, right? So, so it's very important to see what's happening, especially that system one approach when they are shopping. This is when a consumer would realistically be engaging with your product. You know, it's in the store, it's in the environment. So it's important that research helps, you know, tries to mimic that, I should say, to really get closest to what, you know, would happen in store if you were to go live with that pack design. Awesome. To quickly wrap up, some of the key takeaways here today is definitely getting those consumers comfortable with not just the group and the environment, but the moderator, and ensuring that, you know, that it's an open space for them to share their opinions, even if they don't necessarily agree with one another. And of course, it's important to have the moderator build that rapport in that open space. Thinking about subjectivity when it comes to the research that's conducted, finding techniques to avoid that, right? Going beyond the likes and dislikes is important to really understand if your designs are achieving your goals, your objectives. So what are they communicating more than I like this or I don't like that. And then when it comes to the STEM and making sure that, you know, we're keeping STEM in that context, in the environment, that is everything. And it certainly yields different results than when we are showcasing consumers STEM that is just in isolation by itself. But with that said, thank you again, Candace, for your time and input. And thank you all for joining us. Stay tuned for next month's Behaviorally Speaking.
Thank you, Paul.